Mighty God, thank you, my Lord, for this Sabbath day. Thank you for the opportunity that we can come together as a movement and as people in South Africa, and we can share information. Lord, there's so many things going on that I think we're missing. We're not looking for it. It's sometimes not part of our interest. Please help us to open our eyes to see all these things as they're happening. Even be with me and Erika and all of us as we want to discuss relationships, and we want to go into particular areas in there. I ask it in Jesus' name, Amen. I would like you guys to participate. I think what we've done is when we started this whole sessions, the idea is to talk to each other, share ideas, and discuss these things. Because what we've done is we took a list of, I think, very necessary items and issues that is so important in relationships. We started to say we have to be inclusive, and we all struggle with what inclusive means, how we address each other. And I found it, the more we speak about it, the more we talk about and share this, and even present this, it becomes easier. But it's something we've grown up with, and I think it's difficult. But again, if I go back to what Erika said today, if you look at your transgender community, I think it's very difficult sometimes if we look at them, how they appear to us. We sometimes see all the differences. We see things that is confusing. But my personal experience is this. The more I got drawn into this, the more I look at that, the more you change, the more you start looking at them differently, you start enjoying them, you start seeing the things that we have in common, the things that makes you laugh, the things that makes you to the attraction between us as human beings becomes more and more clear. So, and it's the same with relationships. If you want to be with somebody, there's certain aspects and things that you need to see. We have to see the positive sides, not the negative. We have to see what we've got in common. We have to look at new eyes. We have to listen with new ears. And some of the things that we're talking about is maybe difficult. I don't know, because we don't get much reaction. But I think it's so important because there's so many things that we sometimes don't discuss. One of the things we've done last week was the inner dialogue. And I think this is something that I don't want to talk about it tonight, but it's something people really has to look into. That voice inside your head, when you've got an argument or when there's something troubling you about your partner, when you walk away and you start with that conversation in your mind, go and check yourselves. And this is experience from me. And Lucky said it very beautifully last time. Most of the time, it's negative thoughts, it's negative things. And what we do is we make it a reality in our minds. We make it real. So next time you come to that person, you're sitting with all those things in your mind. You made it so real. You make it so negative. And we're creating so much diversity and problems between us in relationships. And please, if you guys want to contact me or put it on Zoom network and put some points there, or let's go back to some of these items. I don't think we've discussed it enough. There's really, really plenty of things we need to do. What I want to do today is I want to go down with the list that we started with. And I want to talk about the right to speak. Now, this is also something that we can't just take a night and put it down and talk about it. It's really one of the subjects that is creating so much tension and so much problems in relationships. And I'll explain to you what I mean. We look at individuality, and the other thing is I want to add in here also now in a relationship as confidentiality. And I'll talk to it now. Because when you look at a relationship, there's three aspects that I just want to touch on tonight, and I want to talk about it. The first one is, if you look at a relationship, what you see is an open relationship. That's one thing. That means the way people talk to each other, they holding hands, they're communicating. I mean, this is open. If you look at me and Erika in public, that's an open relationship. How we dress, how we talk, what we do, that's an open relationship. But then if you go to the second issue, I want to talk about the close and the private relationship. And this is nothing to do with the bedroom. This just means it's things that you cannot see. It's things that only the two partners are experiencing. This is usually when they are alone. And that's a different aspect in the relationship. This is sometimes when fights start breaking out. This is when a lot of patriarchal things happen. This is where conflict is. This is the things that other people don't see. So when we talk about the right to speak, then we want to look at, when do I have the right to speak out of this relationship to other people? And I'm going to talk a little bit about this private relationship. And I want to ask the question, in that private relationship that you have, in your marriage or in your relationship, when do you got to right to speak out? That is the things that happens there. Let's say, I'm going to take an example to explain this. Let's say me and Erika is disagreeing on something, and it's becoming an agitation, it's becoming a problem, and we seems not to solve it. When do I got the right to go to other people and discuss this issue? And what do I discuss? How do I discuss it? With whom do I discuss it? Because, and please, anytime any one of you can just stop me and say, Kobus, whoa, and share experiences and ask questions. Because a lot of the time we feel uncomfortable, or sometimes we do feel comfortable to go to people and talk about some of these private matters. But I want to just give a little bit of background to say, why do I want to discuss this issue and why it is important? Because a lot of people will say, I've got a problem in my relationship. I need to talk to somebody because my partner doesn't want to listen. So where do I go and what do I do? And I want to give you a background on this. And my background is this. Every one of us have got a certain perspective of a person. And I'm going to include now your parents, your in-laws, your family members, and your close friends. They got a certain way that they see you and they see your partner. And you have to understand, especially in relationships, if you want to talk about bias, this is one of the places where you will find it the most. Let's say, for instance, your parents. Because if you look at your parents, the way they look into your relationship, you have to understand, and I don't say it in a negative or a bad way, but when a parent look at the relationship between one of their children and somebody else, most of the times there will be a bias for their own child. That means if you got a problem in your relationship and you go and you talk to your parents and say, I'm struggling with my partner, she or he doesn't want to understand me. And you start bringing out these negative things. That parent automatically will start changing the way that he looks at your partner, the way that he looks at this other person. And it can cause tremendous, tremendous damage. You have to understand this. That includes your family members and your friends as well. Because every time you go to them and I'm going to use the word gossip, or I'm going to use the word negative things that you tell about your partner, will influence people how they look at your partner. And it will be a very damaging thing. The other thing we also need to realize is, this is all part of the background that I'm trying to portray here. In this movement, we are very restricted to who we can talk to and who will understand us and who share our values, especially when it comes to equality and when it comes to relationships and the information that we understand how to interact and how to do things. And all of us have this experience that people, parents, in-laws, family members, and friends that's outside of this movement, they do not understand us. A lot of you, I know that when you got together or in relationships or even got married, some of your parents and in-laws and family members are separated with you. And there's been damage done because they are not supporting and they are not appreciating the way that we do things. So now the question starts and it becomes difficult. And I'm not talking about abuse. We will handle abuse and those things separately. I'm talking about disagreements, things that sometimes where you need a external advice or counseling or a shoulder to cry on sometimes. But you understand that you need to talk to somebody about a problem in your relationship. And now it becomes difficult because if you go to your parents, please, I'm just going to touch on some basic things. You have to understand that if you go to your parents, the picture of the other partner will be scarred. Whenever you talk to your parents, your in-laws, your family, and your friends about your partner, make sure it's positive things. Make sure you build them up so that you can ensure a proper relationship and better the relationship with all these people. So what do you do now if you got problems? Now, there I also want some of you guys to intervene, please, because one of the suggestions that I will say is you have to find a friend inside the movement that you can trust, where you can trust with privacy as well. And also that friend needs to understand equality, and also it needs to understand your partner. That means, for example, let's say me and Erika wants to go to somebody. We need to understand that that person needs to be part of the movement, needs to understand equality, and needs to know both me and her, so that there's not a bias or there's a misunderstanding or they're already gonna be on your side. Because a lot of the times when you go with a problem to somebody and that somebody has got the inside, it's not always that your partner is at fault. It can just be as well that you are at fault. And if you've got a good friend and somebody that can help you, it's somebody that will sit with you and say, but wait a minute, let's look at the situation from both angles and help you and really have a balanced view. So it's important that we look at this aspect, because I think what happens is we are too quick and too easy to go to parents, in-laws, families, and friends that we did not think about where they sit in the situation. Because if you want proper advice and you want real feedback on somebody that can help you, you need a friend that are willing to stand up and say, wait a minute, maybe you have to look at yourself. Maybe we need to look at this thing at a different angle or whatever. I'm just taking examples now to say that sometimes what we do is We don't think, we speak, and we create problems. And those problems and those things that we sometimes say to parents and in-laws or family, they sit in their heads, and that starts creating a problem or in the view that they see the partner. And when things happen, they will bring up all these things. And they will say, yeah, I remember. You've told me this and you told me that. And I can see how this is developing. So this is one of the things that we need to be very, very, very careful about. Also, when you look at a private relationship, we need to understand when can you talk and when you cannot stand up and talk. Because sometimes there's issues that rather be discussed only between the people themselves. That means the two in the relationship. Some of the things sometimes that happens between people can be sorted out, but it's something that needs to be weighed up very carefully. And again, I'm saying this is not issues of abuse, because when we're going to discuss abuse, there's going to be different rules. I'm just talking about now difficulties between the partners. One is not happy with the other one. The one is, for instance, he doesn't want to wash the dishes. He sits and watches TV. He's doing this. So at the end of the day, you're sitting with the burdens. You're sitting with problems. And somewhere that your partner does not want to listen. You seem to have a problem in communication, and things are just escalating. So somewhere you need help. Now, you also need to consider, we're sitting with friends and people in leadership national board that's been dealing and involved in a lot of counseling and cases going on for a long time already. So if you can confine people there to help them, please do that. But also make sure that, and I think the people will have a balanced view and a balanced way of counseling and helping you. And also, it's something that they will held as personal and confidential. And this is what is very important, is whenever you confine in a friend, and now I'm talking to friends and I'm talking to people as well, make sure never to break that confidentiality. When Erika spoke about the LGBTQ, I can't remember the word. Erika, you can help me with that. That means that if you know somebody is part of the LGBTQ and they're not ready to come out, they're not ready to disclose any of this information, nobody, if you know, has the right to go and talk to anybody and start telling them for instance, their sexual orientation or anything to do with them. It's a private matter for that person when he's ready or when she's ready to come out and make it public or not to make it public. Now, that kind of confidentiality, if it's been broken, it will scar relationships. But this is also true when you look in relationships. There's sometimes things that we need to be very careful about to speak out. Things like the bedroom is a no-no. There's certain other things that's a no-no. But now I want to flip the coin also. When you look at the patriarchal system, and this has been happening and it's still going on, and this is something that is, I would like Erika also later to talk a little bit more about. Sometimes these things that you as an individual, and this is let me go to the third point. The first one is open relationships. Second one is close or private relationships. Then I want to go to the third thing that you will find in a relationship, and this is the one I want to talk now, is you still got individuals, two individuals in a relationship, they've got a history, each one, they've got a background. And there's certain information of each person that you sometimes deal with your partner, but it's something that might have happened to you. It's something about your past or whatever. And this is information you do not want to disclose. And this is very important, that your partner understands that privacy. He's never got the right to disclose and talk to anybody about those issues. So this is very important to understand. Erika, you must help me when you got to talk and give more information about that. But this is where I want to also bring in the patriarchal system and what happened to men, especially in relationships. What they've done is... Yes?
Do you want me to speak about it now?
I think let's speak about that now before I go on with the other one, please.
Okay. It is very important, as Kobus said, that you really must be careful about gaslighting. Gaslighting is when you speak about your partner to others and bring a wrong view about your partner. That's what Kobus has said. It's best to talk to somebody that knows you both, that loves you both. And then the other thing is, when you have a situation that some history you have, and you want to tell somebody something, and your partner says, no, you're not allowed. I don't think it's a good idea that you speak out about this thing that happened to you. So say, for instance, you went through childhood abuse. You want to speak to someone. Then your partner might say, no, I don't think you should speak about it. It's nothing to do with anybody else. And that person is preventing you from speaking out. This is not okay. It's not allowed. It's part of the patriarchal system. You should not allow it. And you should firmly and strictly put your partner in its place and say, it's not for you to know what I need. I need to speak with someone I trust about my what happened to me. And if I want to speak to the whole world, it's my prerogative. I am allowed. I'm an individual. I am allowed to speak to people. And you should not feel guilty ever to speak to people without your partner's permission, as long as it doesn't touch on anything what your partner went through as well. You are not allowed to speak about your partner's experiences, only about your own, except when your partner gives permission. That is also very important. But you are allowed. But then is when you are allowed to speak about your own things, about your own struggles. Then you are allowed to speak out and not be muted. Okay, Kobus, then you can go on, if it's okay.
Yeah, the thing is, what happened is, and I think we all can relate to this, is things happen in a relationship. And the partner, and I'm mostly talking about men now, what they do is they want to keep this quiet. So they go to the woman or they go to the partner and says, you're not talking about this. This is a private matter, and here it will stop. So there's a lot of times where they take, what is the right word? They decide for the partner. And this is the whole patriarchal system. And we as radical feminists need to understand, we want to root out and have to root out everything on patriarchal. And one of the things is, and it's still happening a lot, is where the man stands up and say, you're not allowed to speak. So they're shutting up the woman. And the woman wants to talk about the real issues and things that she's allowed to talk, but he's prohibiting. So this is really a no-no. And this is also part, and it's bordering, and most of the time going into abuse as well, because it doesn't give the right to the person for the rights that they do have. And while I'm there, I want to open up the door for when we look at abuse within relationships, because please, and you're welcome to talk and dialogue and reason with me. The private issues in a relationship and when you feel you can talk and when you cannot talk and those things, there's a lot of gray areas and things we can talk about, and who is the best person, who can give you counsel, who to avoid, and there's a lot of things there. But once you go to a case of abuse, I'm talking of real abuse, then there's a problem. Then the rules changes completely. Then you do not need consent of your partner. Now, one of the things I want to go back is we've read Amos 3 verse 3 that says, can two walk together except they be agreed? And we'll find, and we've seen this over and over again, especially when you come to where a relationship is escalating to abuse. You will find out that those two partners, both of them are not standing on the platform. And the abuser is usually the one that's not on the platform. If we look at equality, we look at the midnight cry message. That means that they don't either understand or they don't want to be part of living the message. So that's why it's so important that both be part of the movement, both understand the midnight cry message, both be radical feminists, and they must be practicing equality. Because if any one of them is not doing it, it's a recipe for disaster. But we have to understand there's so many presentations and teachings and material, especially in South Africa, that we've done on cases of abuse, what is abuse, and those things. And we have to understand when we look at abuse that the work of leadership and the work of this movement to make sure that the victim, and especially here the women, are getting help, they're getting protected, and they get to a safe environment. And this is where people misunderstand a lot of things. When we say personal is political, it means everything you do has got an influence with other people. But it's not necessary for everything that you do to make it public. There's certain things that I don't want anybody to know about me or Erika or our relationship. That's fine. It's got nothing to do with anybody. But once it comes to abuse, those rules change. Because then she's got the right to go to the leadership, report this and say, this is what's going on. And the aim is that she can be helped. The way that they're going to treat me as an abuser, there's a set out way and a specific method, and that method is to help her, but also to help me. And I know that we always struggle with how they handle that and why and all those things. But you must also remember, the priority is not to just make it a public matter and start going to everybody and disclaim all these things. The only reason why we're disclaiming and we're going public with this is when there's a danger to other people, or other people might get involved or might get hurt, or there's a bigger picture than just the two people involved here. Then it is a necessity and a step that we need to take, and we need to involve or open up to other people. But there's a lot of abuse that can be handled with the leadership, very discreet, and they work with the people, the victim, and sometimes you can also find that the abuser can realize what he is doing. There's a lot of cases of abuse. If you look at, let's say, financial abuse, that partner does not understand and see things in the right way. And it can be helped, but it's still the victim's right to go to the leadership and say, this is something. So then it's not an issue of trust. It's not an issue of confidentiality. It's an issue that is part of equality, and it's an issue of what God requires from us that we need to do. And we need to understand that. I don't want to go too much in that, but I think we need to understand that there is times that you can stand up and you can go to good leadership, and those people will handle it discreetly, and they will work with that, and they will look at each case, and each one's got a merit, and they will look at where it's going. If it's necessary, they will do the necessary steps to broaden or to make it public or to do what they need to do. But it's not their intentions to do that. The intentions is to help the victim, help the woman, and make sure that she's protected, make sure that she's safe, and make sure that she gets help in this process. But this is cases of abuse. So another thing is, and yeah, I also need participation. There is, when do you got the right to stand up against your partner and say, this is enough, stop this, I'm not agreeing with this? Because sometimes they say, you must know your place and you must keep your mouth shut. I will do what I need to do, but I want you to, and that happens a lot in relationships where any one of the partners is preventing the other partner from speaking either out or within that relationship. And I don't know if anybody wants to join me and give me some examples. When do you think you can stand up against your partner? I'm talking now, not in public. I'm just talking in that privacy that you've got when you're alone, and stand up straight and say, this is wrong. This is not right. Give me some ideas and give me some of your thoughts. Erika, you want to join me? I think she's locked out. Come on, Lucky, I'm picking on you. I need to pick on somebody. Doreen, when sometimes as friends or as people, we feel, do we got the right to stand up against somebody when you see he's not doing something right that you don't like? And when I mean stand up, I mean in a strong manner to say, wait, this is wrong. Okay, give me some of your ideas. I just want to talk about that. I'll give you my view. I think whenever, and maybe this is the easy answer, whenever we are facing with inequality, when we look at sexism, when we're looking at abuse, this is maybe the easy answers to say, if your partner is overstepping his boundaries, you need to strongly stand up, because you got both agreed, and are you both standing on the same platform, and you both are supposed to understand these things. And if one partner, if I've got a sexist thing going on, or I'm patriarchal in my relationship, I can give you a letter that Erika will stand up strongly against me and say, stop this, this is wrong. I don't know if
Hello?
there is.
Okay. I think what makes standing up very difficult is that you spoke about biases. I think even as partners, there's also bias on the way we view each other as partners as well. To a point that when someone has seen red flags in a relationship, there can be a strong conviction to want to speak out, but at the same time, there's another bias to protect the partner, and they don't want it to go out of hand, like even if the results are bad. So that fear makes it difficult. Sometimes people be like, let me give him more chances, to a point where sometimes it becomes a crisis when it could have been maybe stopped while things have not escalated. So I think as individuals, we need to deal with that fear of losing and address the issue, because protecting abusive habits will lead to both of you either losing salvation. So in either way, whether you are scared of dealing with it or not, the results will be the same. So we need to work on individual fear. I think that's what many of the times makes it difficult. One would be having the evidence and all the facts, but they are scared of things going outside what they're expecting.
I agree with you. I think what happened is from both sides, um, and mostly women, I think, Milton, they are scared because men don't behave properly. They're getting aggressive. There's a lot of things that they doing to prevent people to stand up. But personally, I can tell you this. It's the same almost in one sense. If you look at abusers, if you want to help an abuser, he needs to be convicted. He needs to understand the sinfulness of sin. And even if it's not abuse that you're doing, but you're not going out of your boundaries, it's important for your partner. And I don't say it's an easy thing. I don't say it will just go smooth. But it's important that that partner can relate back to you, also the grievousness of what you do, also the seriousness of what you're doing. Because sometimes we need to be shocked back into reality of our actions, because we always got a bag full of excuses that we carry with us, that whenever something happened, we start pulling out all these excuses that we build up through the years, and we're making all these things. But sometimes somebody just needs to tell you in your face, stop it, it's wrong. And I think it's important. And it's a process. I think that when we come to communication, and this is also something that once we're going to discuss open communication, sometimes we think communication between two partners is just talking to each other. And I think that is totally misleading when people think that. Open and true communication is when the situations are right. When you're going out and you decide we're going to have some nice vegan meal, we're going to sit in this place, that's maybe the time and the situation where you must bring up these situations and say, partner, you know what? We need to talk about how are we going to react and how are we going to address each other when things are coming up? How do you feel if I'm going to say to you straight this? And that's where open communication means you need to really touch hearts. You need to really go deep into issues, because otherwise you won't be able to. You and your partner needs to agree on how you're going to handle things, so that when that thing happens, it's not going to be a surprise. It's not going to be a fight. It's going to be something that you've already discussed. And most of the time, and I want to ask this question, how many of us in a relationship sit with your partner and brought up the issue to say, if we're going to get into an argument, how are we going to handle it? I don't think we ever do that. I think what we need to do is we need to sit and say, okay, how are we going to handle an argument? Take a piece of paper and each one gives his ideas and whatever. And you guys agree on something. So once that argument happens, I don't say it's going to go according to your plan in your book, but at least you got a direction. And you can remind the other person to say, remember what we said. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. And I don't think we talk about things like that. Is there anybody that can say, yes, this is what we discussed. This is how we do things. I know that me and Erika, we had to discuss a lot of things that is very unpleasant on my behavior and things. We need to put on certain rules and regulations to say, this is how we're going to do things and whatever. So we need to come clear of how, because I mean, this is a relationship. We need to do this. And Morten, you're right. And I think the problem is what happens is people are keeping quiet and they're building up and they're building up and they're building up. And one day it bursts. And when it comes out wrong. It comes out aggressive, and it only escalates to usually something that the end of the day is not productive, I think. So I think when we start with individuality, we start with this person's, you need to know yourself and you need to know your partner. And I think this is what is crucial before you get into a marriage, before you get into that serious relationship. It's part of the discussions and it's part of the communications that you need to have with each other to say, how are we going to handle certain issues? When we disagree, what are we doing? How do we solve it? To whom do we go and talk to? How do you feel about this? So that you get an agreement on certain issues before it happens. And it makes it so much easier. I mean, I don't know how many people think about this. Maybe it's a simple issue, but this is where things becomes difficult. I always say, tell me if I'm doing something wrong, but it's easy words, because once I do something wrong and I get told, I'm upset and I'm miserable. But if you sit and you talk about these things and it makes it easier to work through these things, because this is the end of the day things you want to do. You want to work through a problem. You want to come to a solution. But at the end of the day, just standing up is one thing. That's why when we touch these issues, I think what we sometimes do is we only look at it from one direction, and it's got a lot of other directions that we need to look at when we get into a relationship. We need to really know each other. And when we go into communication, sometimes we need to sit down with the nitty-gritty and the difficult issues, tackle it, talk about it, put it on the table, write it down, remind each other about it. And this is when the problems come, you feel much more comfortable to stand up and say, wait a minute, partner. Remember we've talked about it. Now we're in that situation. Let's practice what we've preached. Let's do what we've said. And I think if people can really go out, and I'm challenging you people now, especially with the relationships or even just good friendships, talk to your partner and say, okay, let's make an appointment and we go and we'll sit with no interference. And there's some issues. I don't say discuss the issues. I say discuss how you're going to handle the issues, how you're going to settle these things, what is the rules by what you're going to do. Because one day when you get into that issue, it's a guideline that helps you and you can remind each other. I don't know how you feel about that one, Morten.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the point you mentioned about the friendships, and especially someone having a friend who is in the movement. I've experienced the same. Like when it comes to friendships, I think people, we can be good friends even in the movement, but you gave an example, let's say abuse have happened. you leave your friend without a choice because they have to switch their garment and confront whatever has happened, and that part becomes the most difficult to people, because instead of considering the trust that the friend is not intending to ruin the friendship, I think self-defense makes it difficult for the partner who is like caught on the wrong side. They just feel like, so maybe it's gonna ruin our friendship. There's just no hope of we can still work through this difficult situation and be friends. When you realize like how people can separate so quick from being friends to become like enemies, when you look at the root of what has caused that friction, usually it will be just self-defense from one side to not want to confront whatever has happened. And in most cases, our friendship, they don't go beyond like to be friends, especially in difficult times where you are dealing with like hard matters that will cause like pain. We used to be friends when we are sympathizing and we are always not confronting each other. But when it comes to equality and at one point your friend has to confront you, it seems like our friendship just collapsed. It just doesn't go beyond that. And I think we need to work on that as well. Like, trust your friend, especially someone in the movement, even when there are issues to be discussed. It's not like it's gonna ruin it actually makes it stronger. And we are still struggling with that. Our friendships are fine when we are dealing with happy moments and all that, but when it comes to things that pertain our bedside, we just either sacrifice the friendship because we can't give up self-defense and all that, and it makes it difficult to deal with issues.
I agree with you. I think even when we look at the issue of radical feminists, I still think if I look at myself and whatever, we all need to be radical feminists and we all say the words and whatever. But I'm also challenging people to say, how many of you are real radical feminists and understand what it means to be? And even as a man, I don't know all my places and where I need to stand and whatever, because and that's the same with relationships. Like you say, it's always a saying to say, if you got money, you got friends. When your money dries up, your friends dry up. And it's also a true saying is, when you laugh, everybody laughs with you. When you cry alone. And I think this is also true of what you said, is you can find in a friend, but if there's an unbalance, your friend gets drawn into your situation and it can create a scenario that's unwanted. I think what we need to do is, and this is where we all struggle, when somebody gives you counsel or they want to help, we always attach that element of emotions. And then also what we've discussed, and I found it out with myself as well, and it's a problem. I need to work on it constantly. I need to be aware of that. And that is my inner dialogue. Because whenever somebody comes to me, Milton, and you say to me, Kobus, this is wrong, you know what my inner dialogue does? It starts this conversation. Who are you? I thought you were my friend. Why are you doing this to me? You're not picking sides. And then, you know what I'm doing? I'm starting with this conversation in my head. At the end of the day, I'll go to you, and what will I say to you? Please leave, don't come into my house. So this is things that we need to start with a thought, and we need to control that. And this sometimes what happens as well is, sometimes it's an easy thing and we make it complicated and we create our own problems sometimes.
Yeah, what you are saying there is true. Actually, when someone, like, the denial of truth doesn't start with a public confrontation. Individually, someone starts denying the truth in themselves. By the time, let's say, someone is being addressed and they're denying, it didn't start right there. It's actually a manifestation of how someone is not willing to work through whatever is being discussed, but it starts individual, and that's the most difficult one. We all go through that self-defense, and you'll be like, yeah, like, especially a friend, you will be like, because even when you are consciously aware that you have done something, you still want sympathy. That's one thing how we are created, which is a bit dangerous. Like, you need sympathy in error, you need sympathy in both ways. Like, someone can be like, "Ah, you are not supporting me," but they know they've done something wrong. What kind of support do you want? And emotionally, you still need support even when you're doing something wrong. So yeah, we all need to work through that one and plead with God that in those difficult moments, allow ourselves to surrender, because it starts with the individual conversation and it goes out and influence others, and it becomes a big mess.
What I also realize is when you want to confine in a friend, if your friend is balanced and understand the midnight cry message and its aspects and those things, it will help you tremendously. So I also say is sometimes when you get into a problem, be careful who you go to, because it's not necessarily that your friend is the best person. Sometimes you need to go out of that circle and go and see who is somebody there that is maybe biased, not biased, that is more balanced in both of you. Because what we also do is what you say is, we're looking for somebody that will sympathize with you because you got an issue. So you want somebody to take your side and run with you. But instead, you actually need somebody that's got a better view of what's happening, especially on your partner, that actually can look at this better. So what we sometimes do is, and that's the problem, like you say, we want sympathy. So you will go to the next person that you know you're going to get sympathy from. So by going there, you're actually aggravating and you're making the whole situation worse, because now you're drawn in this friend, and this friend is doing what? He's just taking your side. So that's why I say before you're getting into a marriage, before you're getting into this serious relationship, you have to look at these aspects. You have to talk to each other and say, okay, who is our counselor? Who is the person that we can go to and believe it? Sometimes that counselor can be somebody that can really speak to you on a hard way and really tell you or your partner, listen, this is wrong or whatever. But at the end of the day, you'll still have to trust that that person's view is right. It's not personal and is trying to help you. So I think whenever you're in a relationship or in a marriage, for that sake, look at who is the person that you can trust that understands these things. So once something happens, you can make the decision to go to that person. Because I think what we do is, especially when we run to family, parents, and those things, most of the time it's the wrong person, and you're creating long-term problems when you're dealing with that. That's what I've seen happen, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. Any other comments or issues on this? Because there's so many things in what we're discussing now that can go all different directions. Okay, then I'm gonna just summarize what we've talked about, and we can come to a end. I think when you look at a relationship, I think sometimes people are coming together, they're looking at all the beautiful and the nice things and the dreams they want to share and the house they want to have and the dog and all these things. And it's good and as well. But what I say is, even when you start a relationship, you have to sit down. You have to realize that one day or another, there's going to be a problem. There's going to be a disagreement. And it's very important to sit down and say, how are we going to deal with it when it comes up? What is the criteria that we're going to look at? What are we going to say and not say? Where do we go? Who do we trust? So that you can get agreements before it happens. Because when it happens, you're not going to think clearly, and you're going to run all directions. And this is from experience as well. Or you're going to do the patriarchal way and say, don't talk, keep it quiet. This is what we do in this household. We don't talk out. And you're going to start making rules and things, and that's all patriarchal and it's wrong. So I think we must sometimes, and one thing that we got to lack, and we don't do properly, is proper counsel. And we're all guilty. I'm guilty as well. But I'm trying to rectify that and say, let's start with some of these issues and let's talk about these things before you get married, before that relationship gets more and more, because there's a lot of things that will come out if you start talking about this nitty-gritty and all these things before you go into a marriage. And me and Erika, we celebrated the 4th, we celebrated our wedding anniversary of 31 years. And I thank God, because if I look back and we have discussed some of these issues, it wasn't all just moonlight and roses and whatever. Sometimes you had to sit down and you have to really dig and talk about things. And that's not just communication, that's talking. That's opening up your heart and opening up issues and say, let's talk about them. We need to do that because it's time now. We have to work through these things. And I don't think we do that. And this is where a lot of problems come in. And to end this all up, I want to come back and say again, for that relationship to work, make sure you guys are standing on the same platform. Sometimes you go into a relationship and it's inequality, like we discuss and Erika discuss a lot of these issues. But you can work through things if your platform, your goal is the same. So as you work to your goal, you know the triangle thing, the closer you'll get to your goal, the closer those two people comes to each other. And that goal is our complete understanding of the Midnight Cry message. That includes the equality, all those things in there. So once you both go that direction, you can only go closer. But if you're not doing homework and you're not discussing these issues, you don't look at your thoughts, your inner thoughts and all those things, it's going to catch you one day or another, it's going to catch you. So my challenge is to everybody is go and sit and write these things down and go to your partners and say, partner, how are we going to handle this situation? If we start getting problems, how are we going to do that? So just lay down some basic ground rules. And I promise you, when something is going to happen, you're going to feel much more confident to stand up and say, but today I want to speak. Today I want to open my mouth and I want to say what I want to say. And then the ground rules is there. Your partner know how to act or react, and you go through the motions. It starts with the small things, and you practice that, it will get better on the bigger things. But if you do nothing, it's like Milton says, it's just going to explode. And then there won't be communication or whatever. So this is one of the aspects that we're doing today. And then to understand that when it comes to abuse, we report that, and there's reasons to do that, and we've discussed that. And even if you don't understand all these things, it's there for protection, it's there for help, it's there to take you and nurture you. I don't know, maybe it's the wrong word that I'm saying there. It's protecting you, putting you on a safe spot or whatever, depending on the abuse and what is there and whatever. The abuser are handled according to the prescribed way. It's to help him as well, even if it doesn't look like that. And it's important to understand that. But then I want to flip the coin again. There's private issues and there's things that you guys in your relationship needs to keep private, needs to cherish, and needs to build on. Nobody needs to know that. I'm not talking about bad things, I'm talking about good things now. And there's certain things that that needs to be cherished there. And talking out of that is going to create problems. It's private. It's got nothing to do with anybody about our private relationship. It can cause a lot of damage if we're not knowing what to say and to whom you are talking. So this is things that I just wanted to clarify tonight. I don't know if there's anything else. I will give opportunity for any questions or anything you want to do. Anybody wants to say still.
Hello, Kobus.
Hi, Doreen.
Hi, thank you for the study and thank you for sharing your experience with Erika. It's really a beautiful thing to see that how long marriage can last and be a good relationship that is positive and inspiring to many people. Thank you that you and Erika have worked on your marriage so that you can become an inspiration to so many young people now. But my comment on the study is that it's almost like when you enter a new job. When you enter a new job, the first day that you're there, you get oriented. People have to show you around, tell you what your job description is, what is expected, how to handle problems, how to approach issues. It's a kind, and I can imagine entering into a new job without that kind of orientation being given. And then you get in there and you start working. No one has oriented you. You don't know how things work. You don't know what to expect. And then things just start coming at you. And you basically just reacting to the situation completely unprepared. So this is how I feel about this lesson. It's kind of much more realistic than other counselings that I know go on. And it's kind of an orientation that works just in the same way as someone would be oriented in a new job. And just imagine one having to start a new job without any orientation, how difficult it can be. And so it's necessary for us to have these studies to be oriented and not just to talk about how to handle the good things, like how to have a step-by-step approach to dealing with when people don't agree or when people have problems, how they are going to navigate through that. Thank you, Kobus.
Yeah, you've beautiful said that. I wish I have the ability to have nice words like that. But it's exactly what you're saying is you're jumping into the water and you can't swim. And then you realize, but I've never learned how to swim. This is where we're sitting. Thanks, Doreen. Okay, if there's nothing else, then I'm just going to stop that. Erika, I'm just going to pray and then we can end. Holy God, thank you, my Lord, that we can look up to you. Thank you, Lord, that you gave us the Midnight Cry message, that we can understand what it is